Mr. Speaker, I rise today to talk about a crisis that is facing our scholars, our students in our schools. We've seen the test scores come out. We know that our fourth graders used to be fourth in the nation. Now they're 16th in the nation. Our eighth graders, only a third of them are proficient in math. And when we look at the high school scores, we are 40% passing in language arts. This is affecting our minority communities far worse, where we're seeing 80% of African American students and 74% of Hispanic students in high school that are behind in language arts and in math. You know, today we finish up the year 2022. 2 years our students are behind in school. And compliments to our chairwoman in the Education Committee, Chairwoman Lampitt, we focused on a number of bills, but not one of those bills has made it to this floor. When you look at Georgetown University has published a website called EdEconomics. And EdEconomics is looking at what is the learning loss and what can we do to affect this learning recovery for our students, our scholars. And what it calls for is high impact tutoring. And when you look at Newark school districts, it's $100 million. $100 million, and they're calling for 24 weeks of lost math instruction, 22 weeks lost in English instruction, and the only way to get through this, only way to experience education recovery for our scholars is to start now, to start before the end of the school year. Give a Christmas present to these kids. I applaud the governor. The governor has put $10 million ahead to look for volunteer tutoring professionals to help. I applaud my colleague Assemblywoman Spaeth, who has introduced a bill with myself to look and register those scholars so that we can put them to use for our kids. So, Mr. Speaker, you know, I think today it is time. We cannot complete this legislative session without doing something. And I'll add a quote from our Senator Ruiz. Our kids have suffered pandemic trauma and learning loss that jeopardizes their future employability. So why now are we not acting? Why is the governor not banging alarms about this the way he did during the coronavirus briefings? During the pandemic, we saw heads of state gather at specific times, specific days, to talk about the recovery efforts to keep people safe. The time now is to act. Let's act like in Tennessee, where they call together joint sessions of the Senate and the Assembly and work with their governor and put $200 million towards recovery efforts to help our students. Let's do like they did in Michigan and put $280 million. And they called it Michigan's Kids Back on Track. This is what we need to do. And all what I'm asking for this board, I'm asking for us to convene a committee of the whole. And I'm asking for us to consider 4 pieces of legislation. A3898. A398, the dropout prevention by my colleague, Assemblyman Caputo. Let's pass that today. Let's look at A4458. Assemblywoman Spaeth and myself put that bill forward. Assembly Bill 4890, our chairwoman's bill, high impact tutoring, a grant program to incentivize these school districts to use their ESSER funds, and that we will help them with a grant match. And then also look at A4583, which is a COVID Learning Loss Study Commission. Now that's a partisan bill, but the other 3 bills are bipartisan. Those other 3 bills just passed the Education Committee this past Thursday with unanimous support. They have bipartisan support in this body. And so, Mr. Speaker, I move that the General Assembly move to a committee of the whole to consider the legislation that I just talked about so that we can start the learning recovery for the scholars in our state from K to 8. Let's get them back on track. Let's move them forward, and let's start 2023 with learning recovery as our top priority. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Assemblyman.